31. A country support strategy for Belize. Things falling apart. My support to development planning in Belize was completely different from the massive effort of the IDP in Dominica. It was not participatory, nor did it seek to reflect the aspiration of any specific group. This was purely an effort to design a country strategy for the European Union to support Belize. In 2004, Belize was suffering from a series of complex internal problems, both politically and economically. Like most of its CARICOM partners, Belize's main political issue was one of accountability in public office. Some have argued that unlike the American system, we in the Caribbean have inherited an arrangement in which ministerial power dominates and the division between the legislature and the executive branches of government is of no consequence. The Belizeans had already experimented with institutional solutions to their accountability problem. They had an Auditor General, an Ombudsman, a Contractor General, and even an Integrity Commission, all working in a fruitless effort to enforce public scrutiny. In order to deter inefficiencies and corrupt practices, these institutions needed to be made more visible, credible, and better resourced. Non-transparency in administration has a way of spilling over into social upheavals in the streets. The first real indication of internal political squabbling within the Belizean cabinet came in 2004 with the unprecedented resignation of 7 cabinet ministers. They all had disagreements with the Prime Minister on public finance decisions and leadership styles. History has demonstrated to us over and over again that when you disrupt society, you inevitably disrupt the economy. Growth in the Belizean economy had taken a downward trend in the same period, 2000 to 2005. From a record growth performance of 13% in 2000, economic growth in real prices had slowed to 4.6% in 2004 and decelerated further to 3.1% in 2005. EU country support process. What was I doing in the middle of this mess? My assignment was to lead a 3-member team to decipher the integrated nature of all these developments and to come up with a viable plan for the European Union to support a failing economy. Before we get too far into this, I need to help you understand how the European Union funds development assistance in other countries. EU funds are voluntary contributions of member states. In other words, it uses European taxpayer money. These funds are managed in cycles called EDFs, European Development Fund. EDF is a signed agreement between the EU and the recipient country, which stipulates the use of the funds and the expected results. In Belize, we were being asked to come up with a determination of the content of the 10th EDF. The 9th EDF had allocated 7.8 million euros of programmable resources called the A envelope and 1 million euros for unforeseen needs such as emergency assistance and losses in export revenue called the B envelope. The 9th EDF, Country Support Strategy and National Indicative Program, CSS/NIP for short, had one focus, namely rural development. 7 million euros had been earmarked for agriculture, with a minor allocation of 0.8 million euros for institutional support to Belize public administration. To put together an EDF at the country level, you needed a keen understanding of the sectors you were proposing to finance. In the 9th EDF, there were 3 focal sectors. Focal Sector 1, rural development with a focus on agriculture, where the overriding objective of the Belize Rural Development Program was to reduce poverty in Belize and to improve the standard of living of rural population. Focal Area 2, consolidation of infrastructure development, with the specific objective of improving the country's infrastructure in support of the productive and social sectors of the economy. Focal Area 3, development of human and natural resources, which ended up supporting a project started in September 1999 to promote conservation and sustainable use of the Belize Barrier Reef complex through integrated marine and coastal area management. This team comprised myself as team leader, Anselmo Castaneda, a Belizean sociologist who was himself a Mayan, and the European, Mr. Germain Uria. A key person on the Belizean side was the Deputy National Authorizing Officer, NAO. Her name was Catherine Mendez. The assignment required me as team leader to stay in country for a minimum of 3 months, working alongside Ansel, while our European partner had to leave within 3 weeks. The Belizean Barrier Reef. Now, every Caribbean country has some fascinating feature that sets it apart from the rest of the world. In Trinidad, we have the Pitch Lake, where a hissing, stinky 100-acre lake of liquid asphalt, the largest of its kind in the world, just keeps oozing up to the surface as fast as we can dig it out. In the British Virgin Islands, you have the Baths, a Caribbean snorkeler's paradise, with a jumble of ancient underwater boulders that form a series of caves, grottos, and pools along the coast of Virgin Gorda. In St. Lucia, we have the twin volcanic peaks of the Pitons, rising dramatically from the sea. Well, Belize is right up in the top 10. If you look at a map of Belize, you will see the entire coast is protected by a barrier reef of immense value to the international community. The Belize Barrier Reef Reserve System is one of the great natural wonders of the world, home to one of the most abundant and diverse marine ecosystems. Measuring more than 190 miles long, this reef stretches from Mexico to Honduras, making it the second longest coral reef system in the world and the largest in our hemisphere. How important is the Belizean Barrier Reef? Well, consider these facts. The most famous visitor to the Belize Barrier Reef was the pioneer of evolution theory himself, Charles Darwin, who explored it in 1842. In 1971, the famous French marine biologist Jacques Cousteau brought the Belize Barrier Reef to the world's attention by declaring it one of the best diving spots on the planet. Add to this the fact that the Belize Barrier Reef is easily accessible from the coast, as it comes within 300 meters, that is 980 feet, of land in the north and 40 kilometers 25 miles in the south. Many of Belize's most popular islands known locally as keys, are situated in and around the Belize Barrier Reef. These include such names as Ambergris Key, Chapel, English Key, Three Corner Key, Blackbird Key, Maho Key, Gladden Key, St. George's Key, Ranguana Key, and Law Key. 3 atolls also exist near the Belize Barrier Reef, including Lighthouse Reef, which is the home of the famous Great Blue Hole, one of the most unique dive sites anywhere on the planet. Turning an invasive species into wealth. You may be wondering if the Belize Coral Reef had changed my focus from enterprise formation towards diving tourism. I became interested in the coral reef when I found out the reason for Focal Sector 3 under the 9th EDF. The Colorado State University Barrier Reef Project had already started to integrate environmental concerns related to biodiversity conservation and sustainable management of coastal ecosystems with the development of socio-economic opportunities for local communities. Most startling was how this project had turned a potential ecological disaster into a windfall for communities. Those of us who follow marine affairs would remember a fish called the lionfish. The lionfish is a very pretty fish, which is native to the coral reefs of the Indo-Pacific Oceans. It is believed to have been introduced to the Caribbean and Atlantic waters as a result of unknown persons emptying an aquarium or two into the sea. The problem with the adult lionfish is that it is primarily a fish eater that outbreeds, outcompetes, and outlives native fish stocks and other marine species. Researchers had discovered that a single school of lionfish residing on the coral reef could reduce the development of native reef fish by 79% over its life cycle. You see, lionfish feed on prey that are normally consumed by snappers, groupers, and other commercially valuable native species to us. So their presence could negatively affect the well-being of valuable commercial and recreational fisheries in the region. In the Eastern Caribbean, we tried promoting the lionfish as a delicacy, but the population was not eaten. The CSU project, however, held a series of workshops in which participants learned how to handle, prepare, and treat the lionfish fins and turn them into jewelry. They also learned about marketing strategies and finances and continued to receive regular support from Blue Ventures as they launched and grew their businesses. Turning the lionfish into an enterprise was right up the alley where my modus operandi was rooted. What language do Belizeans speak? Aside from the barrier reef, Belize held another lasting memory for me, and that was how they spoke their languages. English was the official language in Belize. The Mayan population would normally speak Spanish and their Mayan dialect, and the Afro-Belizean population would speak English and their Creolese dialect, which was exactly the same as was spoken in British Guiana. It was fascinating to me that even the civil servants in Belize would speak to each other in this way. In old-time BG, this would be viewed as an insult. Why are you speaking to me like that? Do Do you think I will not understand the Queen's English? One day, we visited the office of the Deputy Mayor of Belize City for discussions on something. The furniture in his office were beautifully polished chairs and desks made of wood. Belize's major export used to be timber. I was interested in getting a picture of his desk, so I asked him if we may take a group picture with him. His response to me was, "Sure, if you so desire." And then, without hesitation, he turned and called his secretary to take the picture. "Shirley, come gal, them want to take one picture." Designing a new EDF. The outcome of our intervention in Belize was substantial, with 44 sub-reports on various interrelated aspects of Belize. In this sense, it resembled the IDP of Dominica, but with a difference. We held to a laser focus on our strategy to support the creation of productive opportunities that will directly benefit the poor and the poorest strata through the enhancement of their capacity, employment, income, capital assets, and the quality of life. The two driving forces in this regard were the private sector participation and the active collaboration of the targeted population in both determining and managing the pace of their development. As they say, when you get an opportunity, take it. That is exactly how I felt about writing the country support paper for the 10th EDF in Belize. Our design for the new EDF had also 3 focal sectors. It is never worth the risk to make changes in format that can distract from the main purpose of your message. Focal Sector 1. Rural production and supply chain access, with the specific objective of increasing production and embedding small rural producers' outputs in established supply chains. Focal Sector 2. Rural Poverty Reduction Support Fund, which would finance direct intervention to address the immediate needs of food security, income stability, and access to health and education in rural areas. And Focal Sector 3. Research and technical capacity building. The following specific objective was to establish a ready access point within the Belize Rural Development Program for the acquisition and dissemination of technical information on small-scale innovations and management techniques. When you are in a position of deciding how others should spend their money, you have to be careful not to overload the system with your obvious biases. You have to be persuasive enough to bring funders along. There is good reason why this support package was fashioned in this way. It was meant to ensure that, at the minimum, substantial funds would be spent on providing new options to make enterprises in rural Belize play a more meaningful role in the economy. I wanted small rural producers to have a larger claim to the national output. The main allocations proposed were in response to 3 necessities. A. Small infrastructure needs identified by the project management and accepted by the beneficiaries, 50%. B. In response to community-based requests and/or initiatives, 30%. And C. As a direct intervention to provide basic need requests of very poor households, 20%. We were specific enough to paint an exact picture of what we wished to see in terms of infrastructure, namely information search routines into applied small-scale technology, identification of program research needs, and assessment of adaptability of new innovations, training of participants in small-scale management techniques, and support to recognize local innovations and information sharing. One usually has to do a little politicking to make sure that you are not alone in your requests. We held 2 workshops on these proposals. The first was with a wide variety of stakeholders, including politicians, civil society leaders, sector leaders, Maya people, and Garifuna people. The second workshop was with the directors of all major institutions. This one had a total of 42 participants. It was made more interactive by using my priority setting exercise, in which the persons had to decide how attractive and how feasible the options appeared from their own reference points. Results. The political distrust of government was eventually resolved in the general elections of February 7, 2008. The government was defeated and a new administration, the United Democratic Party, under the leadership of the Honorable Dean Barrow, was elected in a landslide win of 25 seats out of a total of 31 seats contested. The National Indicative Plan for Belize was signed between the new government and the European Union in February 2009. The 10th EDF agreement was for 11.8 million euros, of which 11 million euros, 85%, was targeted at poverty reduction through integrated rural development. The major plank of the poverty reduction strategy was to increase the ability of the rural poor to establish themselves as part of the supply chain in the rural economy, whether for agricultural or non-agricultural activities. The agreement noted that the success of the response strategy relied on the government of Belize continuing to be guided by key strategic principles, which included making poverty reduction central to all programs and measures, concentrating on domestic causes of poverty and instituting an appropriate policy response, and pursuing a long-term and multidimensional approach with emphasis on sustainable development.